Kingswood. Let's talk to Nick Freeman, who's a criminal defence lawyer. He's an author and commentator and has been calling for defendant anonymity in sex cases for many years. Nick, thank you very much for your time this morning. Welcome to BBC Radio Humberside. I appreciate that. As I say, I understand you've been calling for defendant anonymity. Why?
Well, actually, I was involved in a highly publicised trial in Hull several years ago for a young actor who had a very flourishing career. The jury were out for 7 minutes before returning a not guilty verdict. It probably took them 3-4 minutes to walk backwards and forwards to the retiring room. His career was over as a consequence of the allegations, which were clearly false. And it struck me at the time, and indeed it struck me before then, that there should be a level playing field. There used to be a level playing field. In the 70s, both parties were afforded anonymity, and then it was removed subsequently in relation to defendants. And I think what we need to have is a situation where people who are accused of these offences, where there is a very special, almost unique type of a stigma associated with it, are protected until they are convicted.
Right.
But there should always be an overriding discretion that if the judge feels that they are dealing with a serial offender, and it's very important, obviously, that we convict the people who should be convicted, and similarly don't destroy the lives of people who are innocent, and that's what appears to be happening at the moment. So there should be a discretion vested in the judge to lift that veil of anonymity if the prosecution make an application and he's convinced that it will be in the public interest because they, for example, feel they're dealing with a serial offender.
Please give me the history lesson. Why did it change then, if previously up to the 70s they had anonymity and then they didn't? What was the reason for the change?
Politicians playing politics. But believe it or not, it was actually part of the previous government's coalition. Previous governments had a coalition agreement to reintroduce it again for both parties. Of course, it's never really a vote winner, and it's politicians playing politics, I'm afraid. But every time I appear on a television programme or a radio programme and there is a vote about whether there should be anonymity or not, there is always a large majority of the public in favour, as a general premise, that there should be anonymity for people accused of these sorts of offences until such time as they are convicted. That seems to be the public appetite. But of course, from the media's perspective, the media loves headline grabbers, it loves salacious gossip, and we just have to look at the number of high-profile people whose lives have been completely trashed in very recent times. I don't even want to name them in the public. I don't want to ventilate the terrible publicity that they've already had. But they've been in the papers time and time again. Lord Britton, I can name, he actually died before he was cleared of these false allegations, even though the police knew about it. We have that very feeble apology from from the Metropolitan Chief Officer yesterday. There are several well-known actors who, some have been tried and acquitted. Many have not even been tried. It simply, as in John Leslie's situation, have been told there are these allegations. It's in the media. We know exactly what the nature of these allegations are. We don't know who the person is who makes these accusations because they're entitled to remain protected by this anonymity. And that the accuser, as John Leslie says, he's been accused falsely of these allegations, and his career is now over. That's what he says. Well, how is that justice? How is that something that's fair and reasonable in our society? It just shouldn't happen. If there's no probative value in naming somebody, then he should or she should remain protected in the same way that the accuser should until such time as it's appropriate, and that, in my view, is after conviction. I think it's very important to bear in mind, I'm very keen to make sure that people who commit these heinous crimes are convicted, and at the same time we need to strike a balance between protecting the innocents, and at the moment we simply do not have that balance.
In the wake of the Savile case, are the police, because there have been mixed results, have they been going on sort of fishing expeditions by naming high-profile individuals and not following it up with charges or anything like that? They've had some success, you might argue, in terms of Rolf Harris, etc., etc., and there are some who would argue if you don't do these sort of fishing expeditions, my words, nobody else's, then you don't encourage people to come forward.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I agree with you. Rolf Harris is a classic example where the prosecution, the police, would know that they are potentially dealing or were dealing with a serial offender, as in the case of Stuart Hall. And those are precisely the situations where the defendant's arrested, he should remain anonymous, the prosecution, or on the instruction of the police, said, look, we think there's an awful lot to this. There are several people coming forward. We think an awful lot more will come forward. The judge will hear the representations from both sides, and then he will make a decision. And undoubtedly, he would say in Rolf Harris's case and Stuart Hall's case, yes, I'm going to lift that veil of anonymity. I want these people to come forward. But similarly, in relation to other people, he would say, no, absolutely, just go ahead. It's a single allegation. Go ahead. He can be protected. Why should we ruin his life? If he's convicted, then the public have a right to know, but not until then. So yes, and that's why I say there should always be a discretion vested in the judge to lift that veil. So it's a basic rule, but it's flexible. It's not cast in stone. You always need flexibility when dealing with the law.
We're getting quite a lot of response to this already coming in. So what if that seems common sense and fair, and bearing in mind the principle of innocent until proven guilty, why are we not doing it? What's the barrier to it?
My view is it's simply not a vote winner. I think the politicians have got more serious and more pressing matters to deal with. Possibly. I mean, I can give you an illustration. Nigel Evans, he was somebody who was named, he was tried, he was acquitted. He said in the public domain, I'm very happy to, as an MP, to try and introduce legislation to pressurise Parliament by introducing legislation to enforce this. I wrote to him, lending him my support. I think I wrote to him twice. Don't think I had a response. So people say things, politicians say things to suit themselves, and they don't seem to lose the appetite for it. You need, in my view, possibly a petition signed by all those members of the public who are in favour to make the government sit up and actually take this as a very serious issue, because we're seeing now, we have a life of celebrity culture. We have a life where most of these allegations, or many of them, not most of them, but many of them relate to a date rape type of culture where people are heavily intoxicated and the allegations are often false. And I think we need to protect those sides unless there are pressing reasons not to. And I think what the government needs to do is to sit up and listen and act to try and prevent people from having their innocent lives trashed.
There was a high-profile case involving students at, I think it was Durham University recently, where
Durham University last year, it was, or the year before, it was the president of the Oxford Union. I sat on the couch with him. Totally false allegation, and the young girl who was in question, she actually withdrew it after 6 weeks. That was the end of it. But of course, everyone knew who he was and what he was alleged to have done. He had to stand down from the society. It caused him all sorts of problems. And the problem, one of the problems, these things never go away. Some people think there is no smoke without fire. It is a very special type of allegation. I would say almost unique, and a unique type of stigma that rests with you to your dying day, irrespective of guilt or innocence. It rides roughshod over the presumption that we are innocent until proven guilty, and that's one of its very peculiar and unpleasant features.
You'll correct me if we're going in the wrong direction here, but I just want to ask about one case that's very current at the moment, and I'm very conscious that is very current.
It is current, and I think I know which case you're going to talk about.
Should we talk about it or not? I'll be advised by you legally as to whether I could...
Well, is this the one where the raid was televised?
Well, there is a case going on at the moment involving a professional footballer.
Yes, there is. I don't think we should say anything about that.
Okay, fine. Okay, we'll not discuss. We'll not. But it was more the general principle. Yeah, maybe we'll not. I'll be advised by you.
I think it's always safest.
Yes,
to adopt
right, fine. Yes, okay. I take that. I don't want to probe too much on the case you mentioned at the top, but the young man you mentioned from Hull, did that totally ruin his career?
Completely, totally. An amazing, talented, lovely person whose career was ruined. His contract was cancelled as a consequence of that false allegation.
Right. Do you think it will change?
I think eventually it will change, yes. I think it will change. But I think we hear literally on a weekly basis of people having false accusations made against makes them and made against them, and we have another life ruined, another career ruined, and but unless it actually relates to you, the public talk about it, they're interested in it, but what we need is the public actually to get on side and say, right, let's start a petition, let's get hundreds of thousands, I think we only need 100,000, and let's get the government to actually sit up and take this situation seriously. Let's have the issue properly debated in Parliament, because I cannot see how it is ever in the interest of justice, as a general rule, to ruin someone's life prior to conviction, particularly when the statistics show that the likelihood is that that person either won't be charged or will be acquitted.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. That's Nick Freeman, criminal defence lawyer, author and commentator. What do you think? That's what I'm asking you this morning. Should the accused